samsaradava nalarida loka Junaya karuna gunaganatum Aptasya kalyana gunaravasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Aditya Madhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasutaranga Bajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Vigrahara Nijanana Shingaratan Mandira Majinado Yuktasya Bhaktam Saniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturveda Shri Bhagavad Prasada Sadvana Chirtan Hari Bhakta Sangam Kitaiva Chiptim Vajjata Sadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shiradika Havayurapara Madhuya Lila Narupanana Vahadikshana Swadana Lolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Nikunjayuno Ratikiri Siddhai Jaya Libitira Bhiksanina Utarati Dakshadati Ballabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shakshadari Tvena Samasta Sasti Yuktastata Bhavyavyadeva Sadvi Kintu Pavuya Piyae Swadasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nanakati Gatopi Tayam Studvam Stasya Yasya Asti Sandam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Mame Niti Namine Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Vasyatyare Zadarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Okay, come on.
Tamam Ishwaram Sachidanandarupam Sasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Tamam
Ishwaram Sachidanandarupam Sasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam
Yashodabhiyolukaladhavamanam Maram drishtam atyantato drutagopya
Yashodabhiyolukaladhavamanam Maram drishtam atyantato drutagopya
Rudantam muhurnetra yugmam rijantam Karam bhojayugmena satankanetram
Rudantamurnetra yugmam vijatam Karam bhojayugmena satankanetram
Muhu swasakam patvir rekankatanta Sita gaiva damodaram bhaktibhadram
Damodaram bhaktibhadram
Iti drikshvalilabhir anandakunde Swagosham nimajantam akhyapayantam
Iti Vishwalilaviranandakunde Swagosami mahajantyam agyapayantam
Tadiyesitagneshu bhaktarjitatvam Puna prematastam stata vritti vande
Tadiyesitadeshu bhaktarchitatvam Punak prematastam satariti vande
Varam deva moksham na moksham vadimva Na chanyam rineham varisadapiha
Varam deva moksham na mokshavadimva Nachanyam videham varisadapiha
Idam te vapurata goparabalam Sada me manasya virastam kimam ye
Idam te vapurnata gopala balam Sada me manasya virastam kimanyay
Idam te mukhambojam atyanta nilair Vitam kundhalai snigdha raktascha gopya
Idam te mukham bojam anyantanilay Vitam kunkalashtigaratascha gopya
Muhuschumbitam bimbaratadharam me Manasya virastam alam lakshalabhyay
Muhuschumbitam bimbaraktam darame Manasavirastam alam lakshalavai
Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukha Jalabdi Magnam Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukha Jalabdi Magnam Kripadrishti Vishyati Dinam Batanu Grihane Shamamagyam Yedakshideshyai
Danam Vishyati Dinam Batanu Nihani Samamajnam Idyakshikrisya
Kuveratmajau Baddha Nityaiva Yadva Swayamujitau bhakti bhajau kritau cha.
Kubera Atma Chobada Mujai Bayadvad Tvayamuchito Bhakti Bhajokita Cha.
Tatha prema bhaktim sakame prayascha namokshi graho mesti damodareha.
Tata Prema Bhaktim Swakame Prayacha Namokshigaho Mesti Damodareha.
Namaste Studhamne Spuradipti Damne Tvadiyo Dayayata Vishvashwadamne Hanorayudamne
Spuradipti Damne Tvadiyo Dayayata Vishvashwadamne.
Namo Radhikayai Tadiya Priyayai Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam.
Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam.
Namo Radhikayai Tvadiya Priyayai Namo Nantakilaya Devaya Tubhyam.
Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam.
Namam Ishvaram Sachidananda Rupam Asat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam.
Namam Ishvaram Sachidananda Rupam Asat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam.
Yashoda Biyolukaladhavamanam Param Dishtam Atyanta Todutya Gobhya.
Yasoda Viyolukaladavamanam Param Dishtam Adyanta Todutya Gopya.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Radhe
Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Radhe.
Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Radha Nilamadhav Radha Nilamadhav Radhe
Jaya Radha Nilamadhav Radha Nilamadhav Radhe.
Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman Sita Ram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman
Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol
Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararaj Kachasta Tarasa Charashi Shri Shrimadis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai Gaura Premanandi Damodara Ashtakam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nidri Sesa Sunyavali Paskatya Dasatana. Namaste Narasimhaya
Adaladaayine
Adaladabayene
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha
Chilatankanakalaye Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimho Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha
Bhagi Narsimho Hridaye Narsimho Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapatye Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadruta Naragari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Kamalavare Nakam Adhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadruta धृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
केशवंदिता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह 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 जय नरहरि जय नरहरि जय नरहरि जय नरहरि जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज
जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज
जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा
जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल श्री श्री लक्ष्मण सिंह भगवान की श्री प्रहलाद महाराज की श्री प्रभुपाद की
जय नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिने नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी विचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवारे पस्कतिरसुतारणे वृन्दाये तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाये केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रतिदेवी सच्चिरहताय नमो नमः वृन्दाये तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाये केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रतिदेवी सच्चिरहताय नमो नमः वृन्दाये तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाये केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रतिदेवी सच्चिरहताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
श्री कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Hey Avilasi
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
ए तुम्हार शरण लोय तारा वांछ पूर्णा होय
Tomar Sarana Loy Taravanchapuna
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी मोरा ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वा नयने रिबो सदा युगल रूप राशि निवेदन धरो सखीरानुगाता करो सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दीना कृष्णा दासे कोई ये न मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदये न भाषी
राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदये न
दीना कृष्णा दासे कोई ये न मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदये न भाषी
राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदये न भाषे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ममहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrunda Devi, Jaya Vrunda Devi, Jaya Vrunda Devi, Jaya Vrunda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol,
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev,
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Keshavasya Cha. Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavratai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Keshavasya Cha. Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavratai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Keshavasya Cha. Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavratai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Vaishnava Bhuttarishya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Taname Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Bow before you again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you is his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make a resident Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavana Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Make you to make me the follower of the damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhuti Samata Bhakti Namaste Saraswati.
Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristakam ki
Jai. Chaito Darpana Marchanam Bhava Mahatavagni Nirvapanam Shri Rakai Ravi Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivadhanam Pratipikam Purnam Ritasvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vichayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Saktis Tatra Pitani Amitaks Smarani Nakala Etat Visita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdai Nanuraga Chinada Pisuni Chaina Tarorapi Sahisnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Sundarim Kavitam Vaja Girisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishware Pavata Bhakti Rahai Takitwai Aina Datanucha Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Vipayatava Padapankajastita Sadvisam Vichintaya Nainam Dada Surudaraya Vadanam Gadgadurudaya Chira Pulakari Sitam Vapukada Tavanam Grahane Bhavishyati Yugai Gitam Nimesena Chaksusapa Prasahitam Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Astisya Padartham Vinastamam Tashinama Mahato Kulutuva Yata Tata Bhavidata Tulam Pato Mat Prananatas Saeva Naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam ki jai. Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestha Bhakti Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Goswami Pachani Namaste Sunyavadi Paskat Yedasata.
Glory to
Shri
Shri
Krishna
Krishna
Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully take the nectar of holy sanctity. Your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O mighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want you causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I fall into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet. O my Lord, when my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name. When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord. He shall remain so, even if he hangs me rough by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is my merciful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Putali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Goswami Chani Visesha Sunyana Praskatyas.
There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1.
To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating holy names of the Lord.
2.
To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma to be equivalent to independent names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master.
4.
To blaspheme the Vedic literature in pursuant to the Vedic wisdom.
5.
To give some
Chanting
interpretation on holy name.
imagination. 6.
To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord.
7.
To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord.
8.
To consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruit of activities of karma kanda.
9.
To instruct this person about the glories of the holy name.
And 10.
To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to receive Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhakti Srimati Bhakti Srimati Namaste Saraswati Devi. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So because this is Damodarastakam, we'll not chant all the mantras we normally do, but we'll go directly into the Srimad Bhagavatam and Damodarastakam. So this is Canto 2, Chapter 7, verse number 32. Goper make prahite pahate rajavipavlavaya deve vivasati pasun kripaya rirakshu. Dartot chilindram eva sapta dinani sapta vaso mahidram anagaika kare stalilam. Okay, so since we have more time, we'll go to word by word. Gopai, by the cowherd men. Makhe, in offering a sacrifice to the King of Heaven. Pratihate, being hampered. Rajaviplavaya, for devastating the whole existence of Rajabhumi, the land of Krishna's pastimes. Deve, by the King of Heaven. Abhivarsati, having poured down heavy rain. Pasun, the animals. Kripaya, by causeless mercy upon them. Rirakshu, desired to protect them. Darta, held up. Uchil Indram, uprooted as an umbrella. Iva, exactly like that. Sapta Dinani, continuously for 7 days. Sapta Varsha, although he was only 7 years old. Mahidaram, the Govardhana hill. Anaga, without being tired. Ikakare, in one hand only. Salilam, playfully. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When the cowherd men of Vrindavana, under instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king Indra, the whole tract of land known as Raja was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Raja, held up the hill known as Govardhana with one hand only, although he was only 7 years old. He did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. Jai. By the way, there is a corridor of extreme rain and wind coming tomorrow to Seattle. So it's very similar to what Indra did to Vrindavan. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. When the cowherd men of Vrindavan, I read that, right? Yeah. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Children play with an umbrella generally known as a frog's umbrella. And Lord Krishna, when he was only 7 years old, could snatch the great hill known as the Govardhana Parvata at Vrindavana and hold it for 7 days continuously with one hand, just to protect the animals and the inhabitants of Vrindavana from the wrath of Indra, the heavenly king who had been denied sacrificial offerings by the inhabitants of Rajabhumi. Factually, there's no need of offering sacrifices to the demigods for their services if one is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature for satisfaction of the demigods are a sort of inducement to the sacrificers to realize the existence of higher authorities. The demigods are engaged by the Lord as controlling deities of material affairs, and according to the Bhagavad Gita, When a demigod is worshipped, the process is accepted as the indirect method for worshiping the Supreme Lord. But when the Supreme Lord is worshipped directly, there is no need of worshiping the demigods or offering them sacrifices as recommended in particular circumstances. Lord Krishna therefore advised the inhabitants of Rajabhumi not to offer any sacrifices to the heavenly king Indra. But Indra, not knowing Lord Krishna in Rajabhumi, was angry at the inhabitants of Rajabhumi and tried to avenge the offense. But, competent as the Lord was, he saved the inhabitants and the animals of Rajabhumi by his personal energy and proved definitely that anyone directly engaged as a devotee of the Supreme Lord need not satisfy any other demigods, however great, even to the level of Brahma or Shiva. Thus, this incident definitely proved, without a doubt, that Lord Krishna is the personality of Godhead and that he was so in all circumstances, as a child on the lap of his mother, as a boy 7 years old, as an old man of 125 years old. In either case, he was never on the level of the ordinary man, and even in his advanced age, he appeared a young boy 16 years old. These are the particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go to Premanandi. When the cowherd men of Vrindavana, under the instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifices to the heavenly king Indra, the whole tract of land known as Raja was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Raja, held up the hill known as Govardhana with one hand only, although he was only 7 years old. He did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. Wow. Well, in this purport, Prabhupada says, first of all, it says, factually, there's no need of offering sacrifices to the demigods for their services if, and it's a big if, one is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Well, this is very interesting because most of the Hindus are offering sacrifices to the demigods. Now, is that good or is it bad? So let's discuss this a little bit. It is said, Prabhupada says in the 3rd chapter, 12th verse of Bhagavad Gita, if we can't understand Krishna, then yagyas to the devas are recommended. 3rd chapter, 12th verse. Let's take a look at that. 3rd chapter, 12th verse. Everything is in the Bhagavad Gita. You just have to read it carefully and hear it carefully. You might read it and miss it, like I'm sure many of you have read Bhagavad Gita. Does anyone remember reading this? Huh? You see, I mean, I didn't either. You know, I was shocked when I found this. It's like a treasure hunt. You know, these are like treasures. So Prabhupada says in 3rd chapter, 12th verse, he says, I'm not going to read the whole purport. He says, for one who cannot understand what the personality of Godhead is, sacrifices to the demigods is recommended. It's about 6 lines down from the beginning of the purport. The demigods are authorized supply agents on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Therefore, they must be satisfied by the performance of prescribed duties. In the Vedas, there are different kinds of yagyas prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For one who cannot understand what the personality of Godhead is, sacrifices to the demigods is recommended. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yagyas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely according to different qualities. For example, the meat-eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature. And before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yagyas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least 5 yagyas known as Pancha Mahayagya are necessary. One should know, however, that all the necessities of life that the human society requires are supplied by the demigod agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. Anyway, you get the point, right? So this is further emphasized in the 7th chapter, from text 20 to text 23, where it says, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures, right? So when it says own natures, it means by which mode of material nature they are principally, or they are most influenced. So the modes of material nature are fluctuating. So someone can be in ignorance while they're sleeping, and then they wake up and they become passionate, and then they work passionately all day, and then they come home and they try and calm down a little bit from all that passion. Maybe for a few minutes they're in the mode of goodness, and then tamas comes back. so the modes are fluctuating, you see. But the main mode is the one that influences them the most. So that's why it says, according to the own nature. But even those who have material desires and who resort to the Supreme Lord are not so much attracted by external nature because they're approaching the right goal. They soon become free from all material lust. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that whether one is a pure devotee and is free from all material desires, or is full of material desires, or desires liberation from material contamination, he should in all cases surrender to Vasudeva and worship him. So when it says Vasudeva, he's referring to Krishna, right? He's the son of Vasudeva, so he's called Vasudeva, right? But it can also refer to Lord Vishnu. So you have the first Chaturvyuha, so it's made up of Vasudeva, Sankar's son, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So that Vasudeva is Vishnu, right? Or Narayana. It's going to be Narayana. So then after the first Chaturvyuha, then Narayana appears. And after Narayana, the second Chaturvyuha appears. And after the second Chaturvyuha, from Sankar's son, is expanded to Vishnu incarnations in the material world. And then from Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, different incarnations of the Lord appear. Some are like animals, some are mixed animal humans, some are look like humans. So we see that sometimes words have different meanings according to the context. Okay. But the ultimate meaning of Vasudeva is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he's the son of Vasudeva. So now this famous verse, Bhagavatam 2:3-10, Akama sarva kamo va moksikamo dari dihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajata purusham param. It says, regardless whether you have no desires, material desires at all, or whether you're full of material desires, or if you're seeking liberation, you should still come to Krishna. Right? You don't have to go to the demigods. But most people go to the demigods. So if they do that, then it says this, I am in everyone's heart as the supersoul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Now, people say, what? I mean, you're saying there's no need to worship the demigods, and now Krishna is saying if someone wants to worship demigods, he makes their faith really strong so they actually do it and hold on to it. Right? So Prabhupada says, God has given independence to everyone. Therefore, if a person desires to have material enjoyment and wants very sincerely to have such facilities from the material demigods, the Supreme Lord, as Super Soul in everyone's heart, understands and gives facilities to such persons. As the Supreme Father of all living entities, he does not interfere with their independence, but gives all facilities so that they can fulfill their material desires. So, what does this mean? It means that independence is a dangerous thing, right? Because it can go both ways. It can go, it's a great incentive to worship Krishna, but it's also can be an incentive to worship the demigods or to worship nonsense people. Just like there was one man in Bengal during World War II, he became rich supplying raw materials to Hitler and the Nazis. So, next to Durga Mata, to Ganesh, to Ganapati, and other demigods, he put the picture of Hitler also, because Hitler was satisfying his material desires. You see. And that's why nowadays, you'll see some altars with Ganapati and Durga Mata, and Shivaji, maybe even Krishna. But then all of a sudden, there's also Satya Sai, or Sai Baba, or this one or that Baba. There are many Babas in India. So, all of a sudden, the number of pictures gets multiplied on the altar. So whoever is satisfying their material desires, they worship them. Okay, so as the Supreme Father of all living entities, he does not interfere with their independence, but gives all facilities so that they can fulfill their material desires. That means material desires are very dangerous. It can get someone completely entangled in the material world. Now, the Mayavadi solution to material desires is to eliminate all desires. But that's not possible. You can try. It can work for some time, but eventually it'll fail. So, therefore, eliminating all desires is not the solution, as the Mayavadis claim. So this is also explained in the 3rd chapter, where it says, Nahi kaschit shanam api jatutistati karma krit karyate hi avasa karma sarva prakriti jaguna. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities. Again, qualities means the modes he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So the Mayavadis, they want to give up all activity, and they want to give up all desires. So then Prabhupada says, Krishna says, Karmendriyani samyamya. This is 3rd chapter, 5th verse now the 6th verse. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. And then text 7 says, on the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga and Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So, I'm going to go back here to the verse number 5 in the purport. It says, it is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only a dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by illusory energy. In contact with material nature, the spirit soul acquires material modes, and to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. So in other words, the worship of demigods, the performance of rituals for material benefit, it's recommended in the absence of knowledge of Krishna. Why? Because it's a way to gradually make spiritual advancement and come to the position of surrendering to Krishna. But unfortunately, it only works when the pundits or the priests are genuine devotees. When they're mixed devotees, then for the incentive principle, they don't really teach what is the goal of these rituals, and they just continue doing these rituals because they're making money and making a living by doing it. And that's what's happened. That's why people continue to worship demigods right up to the moment of their death, because they think that this is the only thing, that worship of Krishna is bad because Krishna won't satisfy your material desires. Or if you have Bhagavad Gita in the house, then they'll be arguing in the house because Bhagavad Gita is all about war. So all these false rumors have been spread in India to insulate people from any possibility of becoming devotees. But they become devotees of the demigods, right? They make some spiritual advancement, but they never really go all the way because they're being hindered by the pundits who want to continue making money. Just like Sukracharya, even though he taught Bali Maharaj that all sacrifice should be offered ultimately to Vishnu, when Vishnu actually appeared as a dwarf Vamana, he said, don't give him a damn penny. Why? Because he was afraid that if Krishna, he knew that Krishna would take everything away from Bali Maharaj, and then how would he make his salary? He was getting his salary every month. You see how the profit incentive can corrupt even a devotee. As soon as the profit incentive enters back into the mind. All of us have the profit incentive. We're taught that in school, by our family, and everything like that. But when someone becomes a devotee, they lose it. But it can come back again. And as soon as the profit incentive is there, it corrupts everything a person does, even a devotee. So one practical example of that is many years ago when we had a little house as a temple, there was this one devotee. He was a disciple of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and Gaur Govinda Maharaj gave him the service. He said, "Look, you're a grihasta. You can make money legally. You should make money and help me build my temple." So he gave that instruction to many devotees, right? Many of his disciples. So this one person was saying, Guru Maharaj told me I should make money. Now he's a person who wasn't very money oriented, right? So he decided that the best way he could make money is by selling Amway products, right? So then he became an Amway fanatic, and he came up to me and said, "Prabhu, I have a great idea how you can build this temple, make a beautiful temple." I said, "Really?" I said, "What's your idea?" He said, "Well, you need a downline." I said, "A down what?" He said, "A downline." I said, "What's a downline?" I never saw that word in the Bhagavad Gita. He said, "Downline means this, that you buy these Amway products and you become my downline, and then you sell the products because you're the pundit here and all the Hindus like you. If you tell them to buy Amway, they'll buy it. And then you'll get your downline, and every month checks will come in and you can build a new temple." I thought about it for a minute. I said, "Have you gone crazy?" He said, "What do you mean crazy?" I said, "This is nonsense. This is not the purpose of Krishna consciousness, to make downlines of the congregation, and by forcing them to buy products." I said, "That's nonsense." He said, "No, it's not nonsense. My guru gave me this authorization." Whoa. I said, "Your guru gave you this also?" I said, "I don't believe that." He said, No, you don't know what you're talking about. My guru told me to make money." He said, "Okay, well, go out and get a job." "Well, I do have a job. I'm working for Amway." I said, "That's nonsense. That's multi-level marketing. It's a scam." He said, "No, it's not. They're Christians. They're good people." He's arguing with me, And I told him, I said, you better not do this. I said, you do this, I'm not going to allow you to even come to the temple, because you're going to corrupt the whole congregation. And you'll think you're trying to get me to do it also. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing artis every day, going out in Sankirtan to make a downline of the people that come here. The purpose is to give them an upline to Krishna, not a downline to Amway. So you see how easily the profit incentive can corrupt a person. I said, go out and get a normal job. You can send all the money to your guru. I don't care. But don't start this nonsense in the temple. Of course, he didn't listen to me. He did it secretly. You see, because he's corrupted, right? So, anyway. So here we see that it's the nature of the soul to be active, and it's the nature of the soul to have desires. You can't artificially eliminate them by Mayavad philosophy or any philosophy, but you can purify them. That's the difference between Mayavadis and devotees. Devotees do not deny natural, let's say, tendencies. What they do is, however, dovetail those tendencies in Krishna consciousness, purify those desires to Krishna consciousness. And the Mayavadis, they just want to cancel everything. They say, no desires, no activity, just meditate. It's nonsense. No one can do that. Even the best Mayavadi fails eventually. They'll fall down from the Brahma Jyoti. Okay, so now the next verse, 722, says, endowed with such a faith, the demigod worshipper endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. This is the problem. They actually get their desires. They want money, they get rich. They want a beautiful wife, they get a wife. They want a nice husband, they get a nice husband. They want nice kids, they get nice kids. See? So it just convinces them more and more that this is the right thing, and then this Hare Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna and worshiping Krishna and going out and saying that this is nonsense. You see? So, but in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone, Krishna says. And then he says, so text 23, men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my spiritual planet. This means that if you insist on doing this under the instruction of these false pundits and Brahmins, then what will happen is you're condemned to stay in the material world. You're condemned. Yeah, you might go up to the heavenly planets, but when your punya is finished, you come back again. So you're going up and down in the material world. You're never going to get liberated, because even one material desire is enough to keep a person in the material world. So you see, it's a vicious cycle. And then this is ultimately the whole issue is finally Krishna says in the 9th chapter, 22nd verse, he says, Sine punya martya lokam vishalam. He says, when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the 3 Vedas, in other words, they're following the Vedas, right? The Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, achieve only repeated birth and death. See, the demigods cannot give liberation. Neither Brahma or Shiva can actually give liberation. They can give partial liberations, something that seems like liberation, like elevation to the heavenly planets, where you have a much longer duration of life. But you eventually die on the heavenly planets also, and come back to the lower planets. Okay? So then he says, but those who worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. But then after that he says, and this is the important verse, 9th chapter, 23rd verse, and let me read the Sanskrit. He says, Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvritaha tepi mam evakonteya yajantiya vidipurvakam. He says, Those who are devotees of other gods, meaning the demigods, or any other person they accept as so-called God, and who worship them with faith, actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. That's the key word, wrong way. And then he says, next verse, I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. That means the Mayavadis are going to fall down. That means the worshippers of the demigods are going to fall down. That means the worshippers of the man gods or lady gods, they're going to fall down, right? And the worshippers of money or whatever, they're all going to fall down. So you see, Prabhupada says in the purport of 924, here it is clearly stated that there are many types of yajna performances recommended in the Vedic literature, but actually all of them are meant for satisfying the Supreme Lord. Now, why do we know that? Bhaktaram yajatapasam sarvaloka maheswaram sridam sarvabhutanam gyatfamam santim richati. This is the 5th chapter, last verse, that says that Bhaktaram yajatapasam, I am the only beneficiary of all sacrifices, Krishna says. He's telling Arjuna. And Sarvaloka Maheshwara. And I am the proprietor of everything in the whole universe. Nothing belongs to anybody else. Everything belongs to me. Right? And then he says, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, and I'm the best friend that you could ever have. And if you understand these three things, you can go back to Godhead. Right? So here, there's a full study of the benefits and the pitfalls of demigod worship in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter and 9th chapter. And the final opinion of Krishna is, I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. There it is. Okay, so coming back to the verse today, there are other very important points, and that is, but competent as the Lord was, he saved the inhabitants and animals of Rajabhumi by his personal energy and proved definitely that anyone directly engaged as a devotee of the Supreme Lord need not satisfy any other demigods, however great, even to the level of Brahma or Shiva. Thus, this incident definitely proved, without a doubt, that Lord Krishna is the personality of Godhead, and that he was so in all circumstances, as a child on the lap of his mother, as a boy 7 years old, and as an old man of 125 years of age, although he looked like he was only 16 or 20, even at 125 years. And we read previously in the last couple verses, especially the verse 27, that Krishna's hair never went gray. And Balaram's hair never went gray. And also it says that when he was, it says, there is no doubt about Lord Krishna's being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Putana when he was just on the lap of his mother, right? Or to overturn a cart with his leg when he was only 3 months old, or to uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling. All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. So, this is why we spent like more than 2 weeks on this verse 27, because if we can understand the unique qualities of Krishna, we go back to Godhead. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvata tyakvadeham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjana. One who knows the transcendental and mysterious nature of Krishna's appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, come back again, but goes straight back to Godhead. So this is a very powerful thing. It's the most powerful thing to understand the unique qualities of Krishna that no one else can emulate, not even Brahma or Shiva. And there are even some things that even Narayana does not do, such as play the flute and dance in the Rasa Lila, and be surrounded by devotees that have intimate, very intimate love of the Lord. See, Narayana is surrounded by devotees who have awe and reverence for him. But this intimate love, this freedom, where even what would be considered things that are violations of Krishna consciousness, those type of activities are going on in Goloka Vrindavan. Of course, there is no violation there because all the activities are prompted by pure love and devotion, but it appears like they're violations. Okay? Because in the material world, if anyone did the same thing, it would be a sin. So this is what is very confusing for people. That's why most people who have material desires will not go to Krishna. Like I've seen very decent Hindu ladies say, "Oh well, we don't worship Krishna in this house because we don't want our kids to be corrupted by his behavior." Yeah. You never heard that? You never heard anyone say that? I've heard very decent Hindu ladies say that. They don't want anything to do with Krishna in their house because they think their kids will be corrupted by reading his pastimes. Well, this, of course, they also, they read the Ramayana, but they also say in private, this Rama was not really a nice guy. Like, look what he did to his wife, Sita. You say, they also say that, right? But they don't go as far as, as they do with Krishna. So this is all because they're not associating with genuine devotees, neither when they hear the Ramayana nor when they hear the Bhagavatam. And therefore, they get these crazy ideas in the mind. And therefore, anything that takes a person away from Krishna consciousness is Maya. Anything. Even the decent lady saying, "Oh, we don't let Krishna in this house because we don't want our kids to get contaminated." This is nonsense. The kids are not going to get contaminated; they're going to get purified, right? So that's why Lord Chaitanya never talked about Krishna's transcendental pastimes in public. Never. What did he do? How did he spread the movement? By Sankirtan and Prasadam distribution. Right? Because most people don't understand these things. If they hear these things, they'll give a mundane interpretation. So therefore, preaching is, you have to be highly trained in order to preach successfully. And highly trained means coming to Mangala Aarti every day, following all the rules and regulations. Sometimes the devotees say, "Well, I'm following rules and regulations. I just have trouble with one of them, that's all." Well, that's not following all the rules and regulations, you say. Or then, I know devotees, they're nice devotees. They chant Hare Krishna, but they also smoke marijuana and sell marijuana. So somehow or other, they've, there were a whole bunch of French devotees living in Radha Kund. They were all smoking marijuana there. I couldn't believe it. There was like, at least 10 of them from France. Some of them were brahmanas. I think one of them was a sannyasi who fell down. And they're smoking ganja in Radha Kund, which is the holiest place in the whole universe. So you see, people, somehow or other they can accommodate this in their mind, but it's complete nonsense. So therefore, we must associate with genuine devotees. And the most genuine devotee we know is Srila Prabhupada, and we associate with him through following his instructions. And he's simply repeating the same instructions that Krishna gave and the acharyas have validated. So this is the way to associate. You associate with a pure devotee by following the instructions that he has given, and following them strictly. Okay, so then it says that as a child on the lap of his mother, as a boy 7 years old, and as an old man of 125 years old. So this is real knowledge of Krishna. He never gets old. He has the same power when he's just born that he does as Mahavishnu. He has, and his hair never gets, gray, and he's not affected by time. He's not affected by the modes of material nature. He's not affected by the miseries in the material world. He's completely independent. So when you learn these things about Krishna, and he doesn't have to do anything, but yet he does things in order to give an example. See? So he came as Lord Chaitanya and hid the fact that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead and gave an example of being a humble devotee. So you see, to understand Krishna, it's almost impossible. It is impossible for most people. It's only very few people that will really understand because they surrender to the Lord. That's why he says, Sarvadharman Purityaja. It's only when you surrender to the Lord and engage in devotional service that you begin to understand. Because through devotional service, you transcend the influence of the modes. Mam chayovi bicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatitya itan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. 14th chapter, 26th verse. It says that by constant engagement in devotional service, you overcome or you transcend the influence of the modes of material nature. Also, there's a very nice verse in the 15th chapter that says also that, let's see, where is it? One second. Yeah. It says, Gunanitana Tityachin Dehi Deha Sunmud Bhava. Where is it? Right? Okay, maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. Let me see in the 13th chapter. It's a very nice verse. Anyway, I just quoted it, and basically it says that when one engages in strict devotional service, they become free of the influence of the modes of material nature, and thus they can go back to Godhead. Okay, so I'll find it later and come back to it. Gunan etan atityatrin. Gunan etan. What? 14th. Okay, it's the 14th. I'm looking in the wrong place. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's a wonderful verse. 13:20. Yes. Dehi deha samud bhavan janma mrityu jara dukaya vimukto amritam astate. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. This is a beautiful verse. This should be our verse. We should meditate on it. See, the demigod worshippers can't do this. The impersonalists can't do this. They might transcend the influence of the modes of material nature, but they don't taste nectar. You see, they just say, nirakar, nirakar, nirakar. Say, but no, then they won't get any nectar. So how can one stay in a transcendental position, even in this body, in full Krishna consciousness, is explained in this verse. The Sanskrit word dehi means embodied. Although one is within this material body, by his advancement in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. He can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life, even in this body, because after leaving this body, he is certainly going to the spiritual sky. But even in this body, he can enjoy spiritual happiness. In other words, devotional service is Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness is the sign of liberation from material entanglement, and this will be explained in the 18th chapter. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, he enters into devotional service. Huh? Yes. So, this should be our theme. this we should read this verse every day and understand. See, the Mayavadis do not experience Amritam, this transcendental bliss, or the Hiladani Shakti. They don't experience that because they don't think there is a Krishna who's a person. They don't think there's Radharani. They don't think there's Goloka. They don't think there's cowherd boys or gopis. And they don't believe that there's Surabi cows. They just cancel the whole thing. So it's impossible for them to feel Amritam, transcendental, eternal happiness. But the devotees can. And that's the difference between the devotees and the Mayavadis. Okay, so we covered a lot of points. And it says, in either case, he was never on the level of the ordinary man, and even in his advanced age, he appeared a young boy, 16 years old. These are the particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. The more we learn these things, the more we're going to become convinced to follow Krishna consciousness sincerely. Hari Bol. O glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishnu Bhutali Samanta Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi. Yes.
So Maharaj, the lady example that you have given.
Which one? Oh, the ladies. Yeah. Hindu ladies.
Hindu lady.
And decent ladies. Nice ladies.
So sometime back also someone asked on similar note, but not the exact case.
Yeah.
But on the behavior part. So how to answer such person? Those are so much ignorant. So like, what to tell them? Like, because they cannot understand if you talk about philosophy.
Well, and you have to be patient with them, and don't try and jump on them, right? Because then they'll just be convinced that I'm not even going to associate with the devotees of Krishna, right? So you have to be nice. You can't get angry, You have to say, well, you don't really understand completely the history of Krishna, and then you explain how Krishna also saved the Pandavas, and he saved Draupadi, and you tell them about Kunti Devi, right? And you tell them about how he saved the hunchback lady, right? And there are other pastimes you can talk about, right, where they can identify with, right? And then when you start talking, then you come back to the real question, and that is that what we think is what we know to be sins in this material world, there's no such thing as sin in the spiritual world. Why? Number one, everyone's eternal. Number two, everyone has only pure love and devotion for Krishna. Number three, if a person has a sinful, let's say, thought, immediately they fall down into the material world. So, therefore, what appears to be sinful, what is in the material world is sinful, and there's an appearance of it in the spiritual world, it is not actually sinful. See, like for example, when a person engages in illicit sex and drugs and all these things, they die. Nobody dies in the spiritual world, right? Because they're not committing any sins. Their actions are all prompted by love and devotion for the Lord. So there's no such thing as bodily sex in the spiritual world. There's no such thing as killing people. There's no such thing as hurting people. There's no such thing as accidents, right? So they don't understand what it means to be eternal. See, they think that this body is temporary, and it's prone to get old, get sick, and die. It's not like that in the spiritual world. So therefore, little by little, you can bring them to understand that. You're not going to do it right away because they're convinced, But then you can say, look, I'm a follower of Krishna, I don't do any I don't engage in sinful activities, right? Because the rules are no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication, right? You have to follow these rules, right? And then when you become completely purified of these tendencies, then you can understand what Krishna is doing and how he's doing it and how it's different than what you see in the material world. And but unless you become purified, you'll never be able to understand. So, it's not an easy thing to do, and that's why if you convince even one person to become a pure devotee, Krishna is extremely pleased, because it's very hard to convince even one person. Right? So, therefore, you have to be very gentle and kind to these people and help them through their difficulties to understand, about Krishna. But the key is everything is eternal in the spiritual world. That's the key. They don't understand that. They just see the material world. They don't have no concept of the spiritual world. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's a big subject. Then we'll talk about it some more. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada.
These problems comes because of this. People directly jump into 10th canto and recite this Ras Padhyadhyaya. Because of this, only all this misconception.
Yeah.
They should go through the first 9 cantos first. Then.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. That's what we're doing. We're hardly into the second canto. And look at all the information
First
we're
2
getting.
cantos is enough.
Huh?
First 2 cantos is enough.
Yeah.
To go back to
No, actually,
first canto.
if you still have material desires after the second canto, you should start again first canto.
First stage, right? Once you not sit on Vyasasana,
Yeah.
beyond 2nd canto, if you are not
Yes.
removed the material desires.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you.
Don't sell Amway.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hari Bol, glories to Srila
One
Prabhupada.
more question.
Yeah.
We have just heard that you have explained if you have material desires, you still go to Krishna rather than
You should go to Krishna, yeah.
instead of going to demigods.
Yeah, because everything is going to be given by Krishna. I mean, anything the demigods give, it's because they received it from Krishna. It's not from them.
So my question is, if this concept even false Pandit knows, they can use this for
In a bad way.
they can means why they cannot use this rather than false Pandit going to demigod. It's more beneficial for false Pandit as well, right? Like they are directing people to Krishna.
See, there's a question.
Because
Look,
they're
why are
looking
we in the material world? We became envious of Krishna. So the false pundit has this envy,
Hare Krishna.
you see. So they will, and oftentimes many of these false pundits, they fall down into illicit activities. You see. So if in order to engage in a sinful activity, you have to forget Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You can't do it if you're remembering Krishna. So Krishna gives you forgetfulness. So therefore, they're sure of what they're doing because they've forgotten everything. So it's not to bring people around to becoming Krishna conscious is very difficult. It's not an easy thing. You have to be very patient, and you have to know the philosophy, and you have to be able to analyze how much this person is affected by the modes of material nature. Some people can't understand anything, so the only thing you can do is give them prasadam and not get upset with them. And eventually the prasadam will purify them. Haribol. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandho Mui Savadana Mando mui sabadana mate. Chanara prasade bai e baba toriya jaye. Krishna prapti hoya hoite. Krishna prapti hoya hoite. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya. Arana Koriya Maneya Sa. Arana Koriya Maneya Sa. Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati. E prasade pure sarva asa. E prasade pure sarva asa. Shakshudana Lila Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se. Divye Gyani De Prakasito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasajate. Vedika Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Lokanath Lokera Jivana Ha Prabhu Koradoya Deha More Padachaya. Ha Prabhu Koradoya Deha More Padachaya. Evyasa Gusakti Bhuvana Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararaja Gachasta Tada Satara Shishi Shimaris Divine Grace. Esi Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Hoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Bhakti Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Samkund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhani Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapuri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to Sambal devotees. All glories to Sambal. All glories to Sambal. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutari Samata Bhakti Swamita. Namaste Saraswati Devi Good Morning Chain. This is our name. Srila Haribo. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down this lotus feet with great honor. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is that my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is a perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him sword. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, defender the poor and days. Oh Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutari Samanta Bhakti. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Nirvishesa Sunyavadi